Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another Trident Wargaming podcast. This evening, I'm being joined by local legends and heroes, Arthur Zoe and Bill Bonko. We're combining our forces tonight because they think that you guys are going to be tired of hearing from me. So we thought we'd get together and have a little roundtable discussion, catch up on some of our hobby stuff. Bring some exciting news to you guys at the end of the cast here. But primarily what we wanted to talk to you guys about tonight was how sometimes Warhammer isn't fun. And the ways in which we like to kind of try to make our games more fun. Not just for us, but for our opponents as well. And also ways that we feel like you can utilize to kind of bring the fun back when you have lost it in your hobby journey. But before we dig too much into that, like I said, we're gonna catch up a little bit on some hobby stuff because it has been a good little while. I know some of you guys haven't been on a podcast in a bit here, so I'm sure you guys have tons of new stuff to show us. Bill or Arthur, one of you want to take a run with that?
Rock, paper, scissors, Bill. Pa, pa, pa.
Rochambeau.
I think you won, Bill. It's up to you.
All right. So yeah, last little while it's been a lot of Space Marines for the Battlebling. We've been rocking out games every 2 weeks for the last how long has it been? 2 months? 3 months?
2 months.
Yeah.
2 months. Yep.
Been doing a lot of painting. If you've been keeping up with the socials, been doing a run of that fully painted Friday. It's been a lot of fun, just really refreshing to just jump in and get models painted. Currently working on my Thulsa Kane model, but by the time you're listening to this, it'll be all done, which is nice. Get those fancy index cards ready, made by Auntie. That'll be legit. So
your executioners are looking real legit, Bill.
They're coming along. I'm actually really happy with the project. It's been a long road. I started those way back in I want to say like 8th, and then kind of abandoned ship, and then came back in 9th, abandoned ship, went with Drukari, and then 10th came out, and here we are. So it's been a little bit of a process, but I'm looking forward to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's an army I want to actually play competitively in the scene, so the nicer it looks, the better it is.
Is there like any one technique you think is going to stand out here as something you focused on for the entirety of this army that like you really hope people are like, man, that looks great?
For the army itself, just because this it's like a blue-gray gunmetal kind of weird color. The armor color itself I don't think will pop. It's the yellows. I've been leaning really hard into the weathering and the yellows on trying to really make them pop. Lots of scratches, chipping, doing as much as I can to make those yellows pop on the model. And then as you look at them, there's more scratches, extra details. That's when I've been investing most of my hobby time, I guess you could say. Trying to make them look as good as they can, just because there are nice accent chunks of yellow in the artwork. It's that weird dirty mustard color, but I figured having some of that pop would really attract people to the army. And so far it seems to be working, so we'll see.
It's kind of a Heinz mustard.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I would agree. I think the yellow pops, although I think you're actually doing a disservice. I think that gunmetal kind of silver, like especially the executioners, it's almost a bluish tint to it. I actually think it does stand out. I think it actually looks really, really sharp when it's executed right, which I think on yours it is. It's dark, but it's light enough that you can tell that it's not just like a smoky or carbony silver. And I think that it, especially in combination with the red and the yellow, even from like I've walked by the table and from 10 feet away, like you can tell that it's a really sharp looking color for the army.
Oh, most appreciated.
There goes it's something when I was painting a black and white army, I kept losing painting competitions to armies that just looked vibrant, regardless of how good the painting technique of that army was. So if it looks good from 10, 15 feet, that really says a lot about the army. Listeners out there, you might not know this, but yellow is considered to be one of the hardest colors to paint. However, Bill here has a big secret. You can hit him up on Facebook or Instagram at the Trident socials. He'll share that with you. You'll paint the best yellow, and it's the easiest trick you could ever possibly learn. You just have to ask the man.
Absolutely.
And Arthur, what have you been working on?
Well, I think it's been a few months since I was last been on the podcast, and so I have painted and then sold an entire Tau army for that codex coming out today.
Yeah.
And then out of that, I bought a 3D printer. So I've been doing that. I've been doing some 3D modeling in Blender, but I've also been finishing up a few different projects. So one of the projects is we actually got some merch from Proxy Wars to kind of throw out for Trident. So you're going to see that hit our socials here right away. We got a bunch of Eldar stuff, amongst other things. But they did a really great job. In addition to that, I've been finishing off like a fully painted Age of Sigmar army. And this is an army that I've really tried to put the non-metal metallic golds into, but everywhere. So I was timing myself as I was painting some cavalry today. And so for this whole paint project, the goal is that rather than start with a base tone in the classic GWA and then wash and layer up to get to a highlight, I started with a mid-tone, and then you highlight it, and then you layer down at the same. So that's the essence of non-metal metallics, but I would kind of do that with all of that army, and it's taking forever. So on a single cavalry model, it took me 42 minutes just to do the base coat for the armor trim for one model.
Wow.
But that's what it takes. And then when you see these things, like I was saying to Bill, from 10 or 15 feet away, it pops. And then when you get closer, it pops even more. And what I'm going for here is an army that when everyone looks, they say, man, that thing's dope.
Yeah.
I wish I had models like that.
Well, your color scheme also helps a lot with that, I think. Your selection of colors for your high elves are just spectacular, in my opinion.
They're called Lumineth.
I'm sorry.
That's the old
Your
Lumineth. Your Lumineth elves. Their colors are wonderful, is my point.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
They are. They do look really good. I just want to say, if you look hard enough at Arthur's army, you'll see just a little bit of his soul in that painting too. Because he's been transferring some in there for sure.
Yeah.
It's coming along. So I actually had plans. I was getting everything done over spring break, which I wrote down a schedule. This day we're doing cavalry fur. This day we're doing leathers. This day we're doing bases. And I entirely underestimated how long non-metal metallics would be.
Well.
So instead of doing 23 models, I've done 10, and I'm still behind the schedule I created. Which is fine. It just takes forever. But I think something that as wargamers that we all are, and this actually kind of goes into the topic, we don't really paint for fun. We paint in general because you need the points to get something onto the table, or you want a new unit to play in a tournament, or this thing is now the meta option. And I think 95% of us, that's what we do. And there are some people who are like, this is cool, I want to paint this because it's dope. But I think that's like fewer and far between, at least amidst the competitive circles that we frequent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be really careful when you're doing like the whole armies that it doesn't suck the fun out of you, because when it does, you'll drop that project for 4 months like I did.
I do think there are definitely people who do paint for fun, but I think you're right that the overlap between people who are actually getting regular games in and the people who just really enjoy painting for the sake of it is relatively small. Not to say that you necessarily hate painting. I know a lot of folks who do enjoy it, but the level of enjoyment, the reason they're in the hobby might not be because of the painting per se, if they're playing a lot of games.
Well, whatever is going to keep people in the hobby is whatever they find fun.
Well, exactly.
And you know what? And you have to alter that because your taste in fun will change. Sometimes you're going to find that fun by playing competitively, but after a while, maybe you're going to get tired of seeing the same competitive options, and so you're going to want to branch out to something else. You have to kind of try to keep it fun. What have you been painting, Scotty, or building? There has to be something.
Yeah, actually, it's a few things. I had a very tragic issue, which is that I went out of my way to paint a Space Marine captain, a fairly generic one. Still looked pretty good, and I told myself I'm going to go all out with this guy because what I wanted to do was to have a model which looked finally, I'm not going to say as nice as your guys, but as close as I can get, because I know that if I really apply myself, I can actually do okay. I can have some models that look kind of nice, some that you can put on the Trident page sort of thing. I wanted to have it ready. It's for my Minotaurs for the Palace of Thorn events, which we're doing in just a week. And this past week when I came home, I found him with several teeth marks. As one of the kittens had found him and done some battle damage. So
that sounds as unlucky as Bill fucking curb stomping his chaplain or whatever.
It was my master possession, and yes, my steel toes crushed that thing into oblivion.
That's what you get. The good news is that at least a few of the teeth marks are like realistic looking, like battle damage. Like I need to repaint that part, obviously, but they will legitimately look good. But aside from that, that kind of sucked. I have been working on a pair of Ballistus Dreadnoughts that I want to also have ready for next week. Let's see how that goes. I'll keep you up to date. And then I was actually doing a bunch of work. As you guys know, I've mostly been playing my Necrons lately. So I was doing a bunch of work, catching up on a few spare units with them that have been waiting around, just some odds and ends, some bases, some arms. I'm still not 100% sure what I want to do to finish off my Caesaris model. To kind of get that model popping, but I did one of my Necron Lords, just kind of the odds and ends, like models that fill out your army but never really take up the main bulk of it. And I also, for full auto, when I went a couple weeks ago with my AdMech, I needed to convert 10 of my Rust Stalkers over to Infiltrators, so I spent a weekend trying to figure out how to make a combination Infiltrator Rust Stalker model, which I actually ended up doing to my satisfaction, but it ended up being a pretty heavy-duty conversion job. So those came out okay, though. So yeah, I've kind of been literally dabbling in 3 different armies lately, which is actually how I find fun in painting and hobbying, because it is not my strong suit. So I really do have to be like invested in the thing that I am working on at a given time. It is very much just exactly what I want to do and nothing else.
You know what's interesting about that?
It's worked out.
I had a friend who, when he assembled models, he would assemble them 1 miniature at a time because that's what he found the most engaging. And then he could this is back in the day when you had a tactical marine that you could like pose any which way you want, which is a little bit different than what we have now. And it's not necessarily better or worse, but there was, I guess, a bit more customization. And he had to, in his idea, to keep it fun, do them one at a time. The end result was he had these absolutely gorgeous models, but it took him 50 times longer than like when I assemble a box tac marines. I cut out 10 chests and 10 legs and 10 heads and 10 bolters and 10 arms.
Yep.
And then it's just, I mean, they're 10 dudes looking the same, but I can pound that shit out in a couple hours. Space Marine Rhinos? 35 minutes. Done.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I hope he didn't paint that way, too. That would be a nightmare, doing one model at a time. Like I would just I would worry a lot about, especially over time, getting off scheme. Feel like at the very least you got a base coat all at once or whatever, just to make sure you're consistent.
Actually, like personally, I have to do something similar when it's painting. Yeah. And this is something that comes up in discussion amongst our group chat. Is I think Isaac will often ask, and Isaac is this wonderful Custodes painter and player. If you've never had the chance to meet him, he'll ask you, like, do you paint it all at once so that your thing stays the same? And I pretty much never do that. And then if you look at any of my armies, you'll see how they get better over the course of time. So it's not uniform or consistent, but I don't know, I find it more fun that way.
Mine do change color when I can't find the cheap Canadian Tire spray paint that I used for the previous couple squads, and then I have to pick a new one. But thankfully, nobody looks all too closely at my models to figure that out. So
only the bases, buddy. Only the bases.
Only the bases. Those are checked.
Ryan's on
it. Anyhow, let's move along here. Biz, one person who's not here with us tonight is Kieran, who I did the AdMech Codex review with. He's just sick. He wanted to be with us tonight, but he was actually the guy who first brought this up to me a little bit, because we were talking about fun. Because AdMech right now is an army that we both love very, very much, but we don't find as much fun in playing them as we would like. And that's not to say they can't be played successfully necessarily. They can. But that was just it. It's like we talked a lot about like to play a good AdMech list right now is not very fun. It's not a very enjoyable style of game. Not for you and probably not for your opponent either, because if you do win, or if the AdMech player is winning games, it's through methods which are just really they feel non-interactive to play against, even if they are somewhat interactive on the table. So anyhow, he brought up that, it'd be kind of nice to actually talk about that a little bit. Like, what is fun in 40K? And how, especially in light of, the competitive side of things, there's, I'm sure you guys have been in the hobby forever. You guys know that there are people who will tell you that something's unfun to play against just because it's good. You lose a game against something.
The good stuff is unfun to play against, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's hard to. That's the thing, is that it can be hard to quantify necessarily what is or isn't fun based on anybody's specific opinion, because we all have different tastes, and sometimes something's not fun. You don't have a good time because of an interaction with a player, or you don't have fun because you just weren't ready for something and it caught you off guard.
It was pretty fucking fun to put out 2d6 mortals with a Wraith Knight every turn on Overwatch.
That was tremendously fun.
I had so much fun.
So incredibly fun. I recall it.
So much fun to say, throw that model in the garbage, take that one home, throw that thing out. So much fun.
I see. So there you have it. We have different definitions of fun. But there is some things that are consistent from player to player, from group to group about fun. I think in general, and I'm really going to zoom out way far here. People find games to be more fun when they're close. They also tend to find things to be more fun the more interactive they are. The more that you and your opponent are engaging in something as you're, rolling dice, moving and stuff like that. Obviously, a huge part of fun, in fact, probably the biggest part of having fun, is just how well you and your opponent get along. But there are, some ins and outs from one army to another. And so that was something was kind of our main topic tonight. And I'd love to hear from you guys a little bit about what does make for a fun game for you, and also what are, on the flip side, some turnoffs. And let's see if we can find some common ground between us, because I know that we do have some differences between what we do and don't enjoy in the hobby. So let's start. I'm looking at you guys. Arthur's leaning forward. He's ready to rock. We're going to go with him.
Okay. I want to take a different angle at this, and I want to talk about game agnostic and what makes a system mechanically fun, and not just about finding fun in the hobby, because I think that's a different discussion. And I want to take you back on a trip here to talk about Warhammer Fantasy. Hands up if you played Warhammer Fantasy. No, not Old World. Okay.
The OG.
The OG. I caught the tail end of Warhammer Fantasy, and I loved it. I found the novelty of it so fun. And I was playing during the end times. And the thing about, if you haven't played the end times or know anything about Warhammer Fantasy, is they took the base rule set for a game and they let players pretty much do whatever the fuck they wanted. It was the most imbalanced thing to ever exist. But holy shit, it had fun. Now, as everyone knows, Warhammer Fantasy died. They reimagined it as Age of Sigmar. People burned their armies. They didn't love that. And the decision on that was as a business decision. But in the end, their very first rule set of Age of Sigmar was all about what the company was trying to perceive as two people having fun. And they tried to create rule sets that were not competitive, but they were if you do this silly dance, you get this point. And the game was dog shit. It was a bad game. And now, over time, they've actually improved it a lot. It's my current game of choice. But it's just because I find some of the mechanics fun. Now, the people who loved Warhammer Fantasy didn't stop playing it, but rather they designed a community game called the Ninth Age, which is so aptly named because it would have been 9th edition fantasy. And pretty much everyone that was doing the Worlds Tour, the Masters, in Europe over there, they created this very well done team of people and community to have input on what armies should do. And they created a community driven rule set with competitive balance as the number one factor. So because they had to watch out for GWIP, they couldn't have any named heroes. And pretty much like they did everything else that. But as in 40K or Age of Sigmar or Fantasy, your named heroes are just like the whatever version of a hero you have with an extra special ability. So instead of having a captain, you have Uriel Ventus and he gives something. Or instead of having a librarian, you have Tigerius and he's just a better librarian. Those special characters to me, they are imbalanced in every sense of the game because they are not the generic chess pieces, but the things that they do that let you break the traditional rules of the game are fun. They kind of get my head thinking of like, oh, how could I utilize this specific ability to the maximum thing to kind of do this super thing that people haven't thought of to be a special snowflake. I find that tremendously fun. Now, the Ninth Age had none of that. There was no special characters. There was just like generic options. You could take a Space Marine captain or a High Elf Lord. And then you could add like a a fancy artifact and command trait kind of like we have for 40K now. But it was so bland, and it was bland at the expense of balance. And the more I played this game, the more I found that it was a very tight rule set, but I found it boring to play. It was possibly the tightest rule set in a game I've ever played. But it just felt like chess. And there are many people who find that sort of engagement so fun, but I didn't like it. Now I find myself, we're almost a year into Warhammer 40K 10th edition, and the longer it goes on, the more I'm like, I don't really like this game. Like, I don't think it's a bad game. In fact, I think it's the most balanced 40K has been for me, maybe ever. And while I have previously cited as the worst edition of 40K ever, to much of your dislike, it probably is the tightest rule set. But I don't find it to be fun. And so I think that some degrees, imbalance in game set, when you have things that are not equal across all playing fields, creates a sense of novelty and fun. And is that fun for everybody? Probably not the people on the receiving end. I was joking about the Wraith Knight. The Wraith Knight was fun for me because I got to tell people to take their shit and go home. But when you're the person picking up your, Magnus or Mortarion due to a Wraith Knight shooting it, you probably find that pretty unfun. So I guess there's a level of subjectivity to it. How many times can you roll up to the table with two Wraith Knights and people are going to be like, this is going to be such a fun game? Well, probably not very often. I found it fun.
Yeah, and that's fair. I have some thoughts on what you're saying there, but I do want to let Bill get in here first and offer some insight to the conversation. So we'll turn it over to him.
The thesis is essentially there is I think imbalance to a small degree makes fun.
I think I agree with that just because it changes the status quo of your game. If we didn't have any special characters, we didn't have anything that added that extra flavor, I do think it would be fairly bland. A lot of my experience with that comes from Horus Heresy, where these characters are given, special rules and they help your army interact in different ways. But a lot of people around the world, mostly TOs, were trying to keep them all banned, and they didn't want them in there at all. But to me, that felt unfun. That felt like, well, what's a World Eater's army if you can't be running around with Karn? That's awesome, right? But a lot of people didn't like that, and it seemed to kind of direct away for, I don't know what the best word is for it, but for, I guess, the guys who just kind of wanted to roll dice and do their thing, an avenue or an outlet to play, whereas I wanted to actually tell stories with my army based on the lore I've heard.
You want to play narrative.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that part was always a thing. What?
Yeah. We've always considered you a narrative player.
No, you're banned from the word narrative.
Probably now. Yeah, probably now.
It's gonna be weird for Bad Ab then.
Well, I've been trying real hard actually to keep that army fun. There are more powerful choices than others, but I also for the the beta lists and the whole feel of it, I wanted to keep it rule of cool. I want to have fun with it. I want to have an army that's it will still hit hard, but it may not have the most meta choice in it just because it's meant to be fun, right? Especially with the Crusade rules layered on. there's a lot of action, a lot of shenanigans going on these armies, and at a certain point, it's kind of how I felt when I was jumping into 40K 9th edition, where it's like, you just tell me what it does and I'll believe you, because I don't have any other reference. And other than playing against other Marines, which I know how they play, all the Crusade stuff layered on, I'm like, yeah, sure, man, whatever it does, just tell me. -1 the hit and half damage and all this other stuff. You're like, okay, no problem. It's just, it is what it is. But it does add a layer of fun to it.
Well, you're having fun, so you don't care.
It's true. It's true.
Right.
Well, are you only able to have fun with that because the stakes of the narrative campaign means that, like, if you lose, it doesn't really matter? So that then at that point you can say, well, or does it? But like, if you're playing for like a narrative campaign, hypothetically, you're not just trying to metagame to slap everyone's tits off and call it a day. I'm also playing in a narrative campaign for Age of Sigmar right now, and you don't win anything for getting first place. My very first game, my opponent, shout out Ed Salties, hit my general and my legend, my lord, my hero that I've been writing a story about and named and gave artifacts to with some bullshit magic power and murdered them forever. They're gone. Game 1 of this narrative league. Fucking start over from scratch. But like, so it's narrative, so you have to just kind of accept it, roll with it, and laugh about it, and move on. But because I'm not actually winning or losing anything, we can call that fun.
Well, you can call it. I don't think it's about calling it fun. I mean, it either is or it isn't. If you're having fun, you're having fun. I do agree that the change in the stakes may change your like what the triggers are for you for what is or is not fun. I do want to go back to what you said there, because I do think it is relevant, and I think you're onto something a little bit that I have noticed. Obviously, like you said, with yourself, but with a couple players actually, in regards to 40K 10th. Because that's the thing, is that, yeah, there are a lot of folks, not a lot, there's a few folks I know who were pretty big into 9th or 8th or whatever, who don't like 10th as much. And I think, certainly originally there was a lot of talk about imbalance or not liking the way a certain rule change or whatever. But one thing that is, as you mentioned, become very clear is that it is, at this point, and probably will be going forward, one of the most balanced, externally balanced rule sets we've had. However, for some folks, that is leading at least a little bit to a reduction in their fun. And I think it's important that we clarify that that's not necessarily because it's harder to find something that's imba that you can then go terrorize everybody in your neighborhood with. There are going to be players like that. Oh, I've lost your audio there.
I was just shouting Wraith Knight, but I didn't want to talk.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's fair. That's okay. I just figured we were censoring the word Wraith Knight from now on. But no, it for someone maybe that's it. But actually, I do think that you have to look at what the cost of balance is. And in a system that is as big as AOS or 40K, the reality is, and we look at the state of the game in 40K right now, that means that there's a lot of stuff that's in the game that is quantifiably never going to get touched. It does lead to a sense of sameness, especially if the codexes aren't coming out fast enough, which I think they are, but that has been an issue in the past, or if there isn't enough turnover in the meta, which I do think honestly might be some of it in 40K right now, is some of that malaise settling on a few people. Is just that, things just don't change enough. And that kind of leads me to kind of what I think is one of the biggest triggers for fun for people in 40K AOS, whatever. And that is that I think change is fun. And this is not just like a Zinch branded method or message. I'm not picking a chaos god here or whatever, but I genuinely think that one of the most attractive things about 9th edition, especially because there was oftentimes dramatic imbalance.
Sure, I've Harlequins, Tyranids, Eldar, Armor of Contempt, fucking on-release Drukhari, the list, Tau, Custodian,
every single type of elf. It's wild. But yeah, no, that's the thing, is that there was a lot of imbalance. However, a lot of people did have a lot of fun, even without necessarily playing those armies or being forced to play against them. Because here's my thoughts. there was a ton of change, and part of it was because the books were incredibly deep rules-wise, which we've talked about was also a bit of a negative thing for a lot of people, especially those trying to get into the hobby, because there's just so many rules and you never can really know them all.
Well, you can't just buy the core rule book and a codex, because now you need this supplement and this FAQ and this other thing. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, and there was a big, like, honestly, the seasons as well, like the Arcs of Omen
Every 6 months, yeah.
Nakmend and Nephilim
I hated that.
made dramatic, and see, that's just it. There were a lot of players who didn't, but a lot of the players who liked Ninth liked it for those reasons. It's because every 6 months or so, between the codexes that were released and the rules, the core rules changing, you got this change, which made it so that there was always new things coming up, and there was always, like, I had a blast with Admech in part because even though they got their codex early, mid 9th, I kept finding new things every season or every codex release that suddenly were relevant in the meta. And it was really fun. And honestly, here's another thing. This is true of so many people. Nobody wants to say it, though, so I'm gonna. One of the funnest things that you can do in the hobby is to find lists or armies or things that nobody's really looking at and have success with them, because it makes you feel real smart. That is something that is a lot more common or a lot more possible in a rule set that is less predictable, that has more change, more flux in it. Whereas when the rules become really, really, really balanced, the chances of somebody spotting something that maybe other people haven't been playing very much that is actually kind of good into the meta is very low, because, you know, I hate to say it, but the meta kind of becomes figured out, you know? And that doesn't mean that that's usually said in the sense that, like, somebody finds something that's just basically unbeatable, but the meta can be figured out in a balanced way too, where you just know rock always beats scissors, scissors beats paper, except on this mission where things are different or whatever. So yeah, I agree with you, Arthur, in that, like you said, some level of imbalance actually helps create the fun, but also, like, I wonder if it's just the imbalance. It's not imbalance as much as it is a sense of mystery, almost like a lack of complete understanding of the game. You know, having a strong understanding of the game, but not being able to have everything figured out, which becomes so much easier when things are really, really balanced, you know?
Interesting, because you know, when a new video game comes out, we can use Baldur's Gate 3 here as an example. Well, unfortunately, now is a bad example, because, like, reviewers get advanced copies of this shit, and then as soon as they post like full walkthroughs for everything. But there is a degree of fun when you encounter a problem that you can't just Google and find the answer to.
Yeah.
Bill, when Heresy 2.0 dropped, did you have any fun in, like, I mean, you obviously knew in Heresy 1, like, this blast weapon was the thing, and you wanted enough of this, and you had it, like, solved to a certain extent. So when Heresy 2 dropped, and I know that you haven't had a ton of fun playing Heresy in its current edition, but, like, when it first dropped, did you find it fun in navigating this new rule set that didn't have a solved state?
That part I did. Like, reviewing the rules, you could kind of see where the meta was going to go, and it was going to be heavy support squads and contemptors. Myself, as a player, I like to go against the grain. I like to run, like, anti-meta. So I built my army designed to deal with long-range heavy support squads and to be able to take out dreads. And that increased my fun level, because no matter what I played, I was always going into it, and my army was pretty much tooled to deal with it in any way on the tabletop. But that was not fun for other people. Just because, hey, I'm rolling up, I've got, 6 Proteus Land Speeders with double grav. Well, I can theoretically pop up to 4 dreadnoughts a turn. And when people are like, oh, check out my army, it's like 12 dreadnoughts, and you kill a quarter of their army in one round of shooting, and your whole army kind of moves back, you can kind of just see the wind get taken out of their sails, and they're like, well, okay, fuck, I guess I'm going to lose, right? And you're like, well, yeah, like, I'm tooled to beat you, right? Like, I'm tooled to beat you. It is what it is. But that's going to happen. It is a paper, rock, scissors game. But I think it shook things up enough, because early on, I found these Proteus Land Speeders. I started taking to events in BC and other spots, and they were causing a ruckus. And then you touch base with the boys of the Golden Throne a few months later. Well, now half the guys are running Proteus Land Speeders because they just fuck shit up, and they're points efficient, and they do well on the tabletop. it's good. That for me, that feels good because I'm like, yeah, I threw a wrench in the meta. Fuck those guys, right? Like the guys who just want to lean into unfun stuff. That I didn't mind.
Do you find losing fun? Like, can you lose and have fun? So what you're describing there is like you're up against the meta. You know the meta is going to be this thing, and for a while the meta at Foe or our local gaming club was Armor of Contempt, and then for a while you had to expect that you're going to be dealing with 2+ armor, right? So if your army can't navigate that, you kind of tool against it. But then you start creaming those guys, and they're getting upset because you have 27 Bright Lances and they have 27 Custodies, and they're going to pick their Custodies because Bright Lances pick them up. They're going to lose and not have fun. Can you lose and have fun?
I think so. For my personal journey with Drukhari, at the beginning or tail end of 9th, which was like 2 games, when I actually played 10th with them, I got my teeth kicked in for several months, and I just kept changing it and tweaking it and doing my thing. But eventually, when I donned the mantle of Darklance Daddy, it started to become fun because I was learning my army as we go. And then, yeah, I legit had 27 Dark Lances. And it was more like I guess that might have been more like a stat check thing. But for me, that was fun because it's like, instead of getting just completely dumpstered, now I'm starting to tie or even win some of these games. And I was like, oh, this is pretty sweet. Like, this was fun.
Well, you have those pink Drukhari, right? Because I think I heard about you in like this Latin American Warhammer podcast where they called you Pink Poppy.
Boy.
Can you lose and have fun, Scotty?
Don't look that up on Google.
It will not be me.
Yeah, you can. Honestly, a great example is actually just about a month ago or whatever when one of our other Foe players was testing out some Tyranids. Wanted to test out like a specific kind of style with the Vanguard Assault Swarm.
Oh, this is when you got shit kicked to like 20 points or whatever.
Yeah, well, and I was playing my Necrons, and like we talked about it, and like the mission and everything, like we were fairly certain that this was a bad matchup for Necrons. But the thing about it that like I was excited to go into it because like again, kind of leading to what I said before, we were discovering stuff. Like I wanted to know how it played because it's not like the only army that plays like that. He wanted to know how it would play. We both wanted to kind of get a feel for it. And like throughout the entire game, and certainly for the first couple turns, like we're both decent players doing what we think is the right thing. And dice weren't wild or anything in that game, skewing anything wildly. So we were like learning stuff, and it was really fun, even though for me, it wasn't going great on the scoreboard. And that's not the only time I've had that, honestly. Like, realistically, that's most games I play. As long as, like, I'm engaging in something new, I have fun. And a lot of times when I put an army back on the shelf, it is literally because I have figured it out too much. And not necessarily to the extent that I'm winning everything, but I know exactly what the army is capable of and how it plays in every game. And that's usually when I'm like, well, bored now. I'm going to grab, a different army and play around with that for a while.
That's interesting.
That is just me, but I do think that it's not just me. That is my experience, and I think that is the experience of some other people too. I don't know that it's necessarily the dominant experience among the community, though.
Focusing on
what I previously said.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bill. No, you're all good.
I was gonna say focusing on like, can you still have fun and lose games? I really think you can, because if you don't use a loss as a learning experience, what are you? Is it just you lost and it was dice? It's easy to blame dice or other things, but I really think losing lets you kind of like self-check your generalship and also tactics. I should have used this strat at a different time. I should have held back that reroll. It didn't really do much for me. How many times have we been fucked by, hey, I'm going to roll d6 damage and you roll on this a lower number? That's the worst, right? Like, I think it's learning to navigate and also become a better player, essentially. That's what's fun about losing, is every time you lose somebody, it's the after game ramble, and you do learn stuff. You can kind of get feedback for your opponents, and it's like, what, I think this was the right play, or I think, you might have made a mistake here, and then, I'll have to try that next time. And if you're playing actively, weekly, we'll say, it is nice because you can always retool a little bit, jump back in, try something out. I do recommend playing the same army, for at least like 5 or 6 games to get the feel of it. Don't just flip flop and just completely change it right out of the gate, because there is play there, and you can't take the metrics of I'm always playing Arthur and his Eldari. Is that a good way for me to learn? Well, you know what? It definitely taught me how to use a laser pointer and to not get like completely blown off the table. So I did learn something. But you want to play everybody and all these different armies and different skill sets to see kind of where you actually shake up. So
here's a hot take, and what I said about the narrative game where my legend was blown up and forever binned, notwithstanding, I actually fucking hate losing, and I don't find it fun at all. But there's a coping strategy to that, and that you have to like. This is not me as my best form. This is not me being mature. This is definitely not a growth mindset. But the truth of the matter is that I do fucking hate losing, and I don't find losing fun. Not by 1 point. It doesn't matter if it's a close loss. It's worse when it's against a friend. I don't like it. And like it takes the sails right out of my wind. Maybe that means I'm too much of a competitive player. And when I look at like my stats, I don't actually lose very often, and it's probably because I don't like losing. And when I do start losing, I have a real tough time with it. But
only against CSM,
I lose. I think I have 100% loss rate at house tournaments. Besides the point, which is I'm in my home ground and should be my most powerful, and I just keep losing. Fucking loser.
Jesus.
There's a bit of a. That's
is this fun? Is this fun for you? Is this what you're trying to tell us?
No, I'm fucking reflecting on losing.
It's fun
I hate
for
it.
me. Fuck.
Arthur Zoe the loser here. No, what I'm getting at is like what you were both discussing is coping strategies to losing. And that is, we'll treat this as a learning experience, so I'm not going to lose later. Because nobody actually wants to lose.
Well, for me, it's not. Like, it literally is not a coping strategy. I literally can have fun in a game that I don't lose. It's like I said, for me, and I think for other like-minded folks, it's literally about the discovery of figuring something new out, which yes does lead into, as Bill says, about learning how not to make the same mistake next time, or being able to make a better play next time. And that definitely does.
Plays all the time. I want to win.
Yeah, sure. And that's great. And like honestly, if you're learning like that, you're gonna win more. And like that's the thing, is I have plenty of fun winning too. My point is that that's not like the core part of it, at least for me. And I do think that plays into the wider mindset, like you were referencing before, of like that kind of frontier of discovery is a really important part of just the general zeitgeist throughout Warhammer or whatever, of players finding the game fun. And when something is too figured out, that can kind of maybe suck some of the fun out of it, because there isn't, like, unless you're new to it, there isn't much to learn. And eventually you kind of do hit that point where you're like, well, I know how things go. And you can play, and at that point, though, it is literally just a dice game, because you know how everything's going to shake out. And so it loses some of its appeal maybe. Whereas when things are a little bit crazier, well, there's more opportunity for folks. And I think opportunity is fun. So, that's kind of a thought towards the general fun of the game. And for what it's worth, I agree. I think currently, and, I know Age of Sigmar's going into a new edition right away here, but I do think that Age of Sigmar's current rule set is more open to that kind of 9th edition 40K style fun, where there are just more unknowns about exactly how everything works out. And even if it isn't necessarily as balanced, but that can make for a more fun game for a lot of people.
Can I have story time for a second before we move on to the second part of this topic? Is
Sure.
When we stop having fun, how do we find it again?
Yes.
And I want to clarify for a sec that I don't actually hate losing that much, but for hyperbolic sake, no, I actually don't like losing. Fuck that.
Can't believe it.
Who would have thought? Never
thought of that. I've never seen you upset after a loss.
You've never seen me have to go take a fucking bath in our tournament hotel because I lost by a couple points when I thought I should have won.
Oh man.
You've never seen me get mad because Mortarian made too many saves and I had a perfect game plan otherwise and I should have won that game, but just rolled 4-ups. No, I don't get mad about that.
Wouldn't have been a problem with a Wraith Knight. Anyhow, I won't interrupt you.
Not back in the day. No, please interrupt. I'm trying to remember what I was going to talk about for story time here, and I'm trying to stall until I get there.
I can stopgap there for a second. This is also kind of focusing on the gaming aspect of the hobby, which to me, like there is a holy trinity of the hobby. You're either in it to build stuff, paint stuff, or play stuff, or a combination of all three. Myself, I used to really love converting. Converting was like my number one thing to do. I didn't give a shit about painting. I just wanted to convert cool stuff and play games. It was great. As I got older and I have less time to build, convert, not to mention also the way the models have gone, like it's not really conversion central anymore unless you want to put some serious deep work into it. There's more, it feels like more cookie cutter units. Now I find myself actually going to painting. I don't enjoy building at all. Building a new kit for me is not fun. It sucks. I know it's a necessary evil, but I actually get most of my kicks out of painting and then playing later. The painting part is kind of like a therapeutic thing for me. I like to just come into my room, hang out, de-stress, paint some models, and then it's nice when you actually get to, show up at the club every week with progress. You can show your friends and people are interested and they want to see your stuff. And for me, there's a level of enjoyment with that as well that just playing the game doesn't actually give. So
now you're going to be painting Poppy.
That's right. That's right.
He has been the last 6 months, so.
No, that's true. I hear what you're saying. You have to find the fun with it. And that's kind of our next topic, but I do have story time here.
Okay.
So This takes us back to the history of the very first Edmonton Warhammer League as ran by yours truly. And a lot of people struggled with, and this comes actually to the topic of like losing and fun and all that and showing up with the game, with the idea of like a semi-comp environment. Because people with the desire to win were always one-stepping you up. If they knew that you were going to be bringing a Wave Serpent, they're like, oh, I got to have this unit that can kill Wave Serpents. And so they would bring something that was getting a Sicaran battle tank. And then, oh, he's got these relic tanks. I need to make sure I have this melta thing that can drop in behind it. And people started getting upset. And there's this discussion that came, well, is this a fun league or is it a comp league? And like every time someone would say it's supposed to be a fun league, my head just exploded. Just like, I have never rolled my eyes so... If you want to make me mad other than beat me in a game of Warhammer and make me lose, you just have to mention the words fun league to me. Because like all of the things we do in this hobby, and this is, again, paradoxical to what I'm saying about losing. All of the things we do here are because we want to have fun. No one wants to play Warhammer or build models or paint if you don't find some aspect of it more enjoyable to make up for the things that you don't like, including losing or building kits or whatever it is that Scotty doesn't like. What don't you like?
Not much. There's a couple niche categories on Pornhub that I don't go to.
You a feet guy?
No. Okay. There you go. I am not
Feet.
A foot guy. There you go. That I do not find them fun.
So there was this discussion of feet of fun league versus comp league. And people were saying that you can't have both. You can't have a fun environment and a comp environment.
Sure you can.
You sure can.
But I think it comes to a mindset. So you have to come to that knowing that you're going to be playing against someone else who's also out to win, that nobody wants to lose, that they're going to try to outplay you, matchmake you, out meta you. And I think you have to kind of accept those in going into an event and accept that people are going to have, even if there is imbalanced things, those imbalanced things to do it. And you have to laugh at the insanity of, 2d6 mortals to my Sinori Enlightener. There she goes. There's my legend. And you have to find, I guess, enjoyment in knowing that that's what you're signing up for, even if it does mean that you're going to lose.
I absolutely do agree, because I think you make an excellent point about the nature of fun in the hobby is that that exact thing has plagued many leagues and RTTs and just even generic game clubs and even single games. Is somebody feeling like the other guy was playing quote unquote more competitively, as if competitive isn't fun. And they, it usually goes back to the idea. It's like, well, I don't enjoy that style of game. And it's like, well, that's fair. But a lot of times when, at least in my experience, when I've seen this become an issue, I wouldn't have considered either of the players at the table to be playing a particularly competitive list. What might have happened was that one was just, like you mentioned, maybe it was tooled to beat the other, or maybe there was just an imbalance in skill between the two players that made things a little tough. But that kind of goes back to, again, like kind of what we talked about a little bit, where maybe it is the feeling that, there's nothing you can do that makes it unfun. And because you don't think that there's any way to change the outcome of the game, there's no discovery to be made. There's no mystery. There's nothing about this game that is, to your mind anyway, could be any different than it's happening right now. And that's why they don't want to play that, is they're like, well, this just isn't fun. Whereas when they play somebody who's more on their level, they feel like the outcome isn't guaranteed, and therefore you can discover things, you can learn new things, and have fun. But yeah, I agree that it gives me a headache too when I hear people be like, well, is it a fun league? Is this just a fun game? And it's like, well, it's a game, so the whole point of it is fun. Whether or not you have any is the thing we have to source. And yeah, like you said, that can be a tricky thing depending on the desires of the two people involved.
So then how, and maybe we'll throw this out to Bill first as a segue, when something stops becoming fun for you, whether that is building or painting or playing at events or with your friends, or for whatever reason that your fun meter, if you're a sim, is all the way down, how can you bridge that gap? How do you get back in the saddle when you've lost the love of the game or the hobby? How can you kind of get that fun back? What do you have to do? Can you get it back? Is this something that you can be like, I'm gonna have fun today? Like, I don't care if I get shit kicked. Does it require someone else reaching out to you? Like, if someone has lost the fun for it, how do you solve that?
It's definitely, well, to start off, I guess, it is different for different people based on how that affects them. Myself, I'm kind of a sponge for punishment. There are things that, close, I guess, to the tail end of when I was playing 2.0 Heresy for, a while, where it started just to become unfun. And just for reasons that we already mentioned, like, you're deploying, you already kind of know the game is somewhat predetermined. So I try to take the seriousness out of it. I'm like, you know what? I'm typically a mobile gunline. And that doesn't make sense, but that's what my army's built to be. It's basically move and shoot all the time. I decided, you know what? I'm going to take Assault Marines. I'm going to take these weird, janky units that I've never used. I have no business playing them. I don't think they're great at all. How can I make them fun to play? I enjoy painting them, like Templar Sword Brethren. Those are really fun. But like,
are they shit on the table?
They're not great.
No,
they're for in heresy.
In heresy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like,
go back 10K. They're not bad. They got a 2+ armor. They got 2 wounds, power weapons. That's about it. They just run in and chop shit up. But knowing that, I'm like, okay, so I need to protect them. I need to get them in that area. I need them to just chop Marines. It eventually became fun just playing people who just wanted to have, and I had to search, like I seek certain people out, knowing that that's where their mentality was, just because my mentality of the just playing hard comp list, doing my thing, kind of was starting to kind of wear on me. So I wanted to lighten up and just have more of a chill vibe, drink beers, roll dice, try to set up some cool cinematic moments. That was great. Even the painting eventually became a burnout where, like, I painted Imperial Fist Army in 3 weeks for an event. After that event, I remember this. I wanted to stop and just sit there and crater out. But also knowing, because, I like making content for people. I want to keep showing my painting, showing new units. I just kept going. And I kept just getting into this part where, like, painting was, like, becoming a chore. And I'm like, I really don't like this, but I still want to make stuff happen. So that was kind of a double-edged sword. Like, I'm painting and I'm having fun painting it, but I also just want to take a break because for lack of a better word, I'm fucking tired. And then I decided to do it again with my Jukari for that event, and it's like, hey, let's airbrush this army up in like a month and get it all battle ready so I can take it to a team event. And that was a lot of fun. But at that point, again, like I was tired. Like it's just, you keep pushing out, keep doing your thing. And it did start to, you know, suck the fun out of it a little bit. And then I just started painting stuff that didn't apply to really any of my games. I just painted whatever I thought was fun at the time. I just looked at something, hey, cool, here's a bolt action tank. I'm going to paint it. I haven't played bolt action for like a year, but I painted it and it was fun.
For a gameplay perspective, you had to take the competitive aspect out of it. You had to take stakes out in order to like regain a love and fun for it.
A little bit, yeah. And
so you had to play in the fun league.
Essentially, I had to, right? Like, we're planning on running that Heresy event on the 21st. It's going to be a doubles. Doubles is always janky. I'm going into it building just a silly ass list that has no reason being put together other than I think it's just going to look cool, catch some people off guard, not for meta choices, but just people are like, really? Why did you take that? It's just to fuck around and see if I can find out. Basically, right? I'm just trying to see where I can go with it. Just also knowing it's doubles. You can't take it too seriously. So
you can take it pretty seriously.
You can take it pretty seriously. Yeah, you can take it seriously. But I don't know. I also like having fun with it and just chucking dice as well, right? Especially if I'm easing into a system that I don't exactly love at the moment. It's weird when you love the lore and the aspects, the setting, even the models, but when the rules don't support your expectation of what it should be, it's a weird kind of double-edged sword. Like, I love this game, but I fucking hate this game. It's a weird feeling. So also though, that said, jumping to 40K for me personally reignited kind of my fun. I was able to kind of put the heresy down. I was like, okay, you know what? I have been playing this game for like 10 plus years. Let's jump into something. And I really wanted to throw myself like both feet, jump in, and learning with Drukhari was a very uphill battle. But even though I was getting dumpstered in my games, it was still fun because it was different.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there was things to learn. It was an era of discovery.
It was.
You know,
it was.
Maybe we need to discover yourselves, and you need to be like that World Eater player that was featured on Warhammer Competitive that was shadowboxing during the movement phase.
Yeah.
You get fucking just doing push-ups. Like, hey man, are you gonna react? No, I got nothing.
Yeah. Hardcore.
I'm going to come back to what you said near the end there, Bill. But before I do, I want to get Arthur's take on this. Yep. Because I know, Arthur, I think you're the guy who, at least that I personally know, that most recently had kind of a fall out of love, fall back in love kind of thing with a part of the hobby, both in a painting, on the painting front, but also, you know, in the game front with 40K and painting with your Lumineth elves. But I also know that you have caught your breath and regained your steam with at least some of that stuff. So, you know, give us the lowdown on what you did or what you found was good or bad about the situation.
Yeah. So I guess the situation was that I found myself probably on the end of my most successful painting year ever, winning more awards than I've won in a year. And that's coming off of a year where I took painting courses. I really upped my game. I became a much better painter, and then I tried to all apply that for a competitive aspect with this desire just to really win with the Lumineth from a painting front. And to the point where I took on something that was so challenging that I had to put it down, and I literally tried multiple times to pick up this unit of Dawn Riders. And like at that point, I had like individually textured horsehair. I had done the non-metallics, and like I think I went to leather, and I think all of us have painted leather a million times. But when I got to it, I just couldn't. And like every time I picked it up, it was like the biggest hurdle in the world. And so I had to not paint for 3-4 months. And like I just wasn't interested. It didn't matter what the model was, what the range was. I didn't want to paint or build anything. And I even had to build some Age of Sigmar terrain during this. And like I sat down there and I had to like literally
begrudgingly.
It felt like I was doing commissions again. I did a bunch of commissions in university to like help pay for some bills. And holy shit, that sucked. Never ever take on commissions. For anyone who's listening, if you're thinking that you're a pretty good painter and you want to make some extra cash, it will suck the soul right out of you. People will ask for the dumbest things. spoiler alert, the dumbest thing I ever asked Scott paint was a Necron warrior, but they wanted them to look like the British redcoats. That was
Okay.
Oh, I thought I took the award for that with asking you to do all the belts and boots and buckles and shit on my orc boys.
No, he said he hated leather. God, pay attention.
The fucking leather, yeah. But for me to kind of break that is I needed my friends to literally like tell me to fucking suck it up and sit me down and make me come out to a tournament where I just sat down and I painted something different. It was a palette cleanse. I painted it was a Tau Devilfish, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna fuck with this. I got some time to kill. But it was, if not for like the eternal patience of my friends constantly inviting me out, I don't know if I would have gotten back into it. And then once I was in, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm pretty good at this. Oh, look at that! Like, fuck, this is sexy. I should keep doing this. And that feeling of winning again, kind of reignited that love.
I remember.
I guess.
Go ahead.
Fun for me is finding success. And if I'm not finding success in some capacity or moving forward with it, I don't find it fun. Which is, I think that's why I stopped painting the heresy models, because it didn't, like, I probably got to the point, when you do volumetric highlighting, or you start with the midtone, your model looks like shit until you're about 3 minutes away from being done and you put your final touches on, and then you're like, fuck, this looks good. But up until that, it feels like you're going on a real downhill slog. And I think maybe the reason I couldn't finish that Heresy Emperor Children army is because I never got to that point. I didn't find that success. I found it just to be unfun.
Well, and it also, it's, and I'm not saying you lack patience, but there is a question of how much patience do you have for a given task, right? The more invested in it you are, because I know that you at times have the patience to spend like days on models. And then other times, you're more like me, where if it's not working out within, an hour or two, you're just like, well, fuck this. How invested in it you are, how interested in you are, will definitely tailor how much patience you're going to have for something. So, Bill, I wanted to touch back a little bit because you had mentioned coming to 40K from Heresy. And I know, to be fair, at that point in time, you were also getting pretty sick of not so much Heresy, but maybe some other stuff around it a little bit. And you were looking for a change or whatever, and you were coming into 40K. And you had kind of had some false starts, I think, with 40K through the latter half of 9th, where you'd come and you'd play a game or two, and then you just couldn't find the time for it for a bit or whatever, and that's fair. But it actually harkens to me to one of the things that I do when I'm not having fun with something, either painting-wise or game-wise or whatever. And that's that I find that one of the worst points in being stuck away from the hobby goal or whatever is kind of the anticipation. I find a lot of times when I'm not in the mood for a game, that if I can get myself to the point where I am deploying and I'm starting out my game, I'm good. At that point, it kind of takes off, and I tend to have a really good time. And there's been more than a few times over the last 5-6 years that I've had to stop myself after the fact and remind myself for the future that actually I had a great time and I did not feel like playing today. And I've done that with actually a lot of my painting projects too, because I really struggle sometimes to get started painting, to dig out my models and my paint and get set up. And then I start, and suddenly I'm like, oh man, I've really wanted to paint this stuff for a while. I don't know why I've been working on this. And of course, especially when you finish something too, and you like how it doesn't look great for me, but it does look good as far as I'm concerned, and it's finished. Same thing with a game. So I find one of the biggest things that you can do, and I know this is going to sound almost patronizing, but like if you're stuck, sometimes what you need to do is just really, even if it's something small, just force yourself to get to the first step. Pull out the paint. Tell yourself, listen, if I hate this, I can put it away in 10 minutes. If I'm still hating it. Same thing with a game. You don't want to do this with, a random stranger, because, that's not terribly fair to them. But maybe ask a buddy of yours, just be like, listen, can we just set up and maybe play a game, maybe talk about it ahead of time even, and have a very specific scenario in mind, maybe, just so that you can make sure you're going to avoid some of the triggers that kind of piss you off about the game at that time. Just set up a table, deploy. And, if you're not having fun after one turn, whatever. It was half an hour, 40 minutes of your time. Your buddy says, cool, don't worry about it. You back up and go home. It's fine. But for a lot of folks, and I know for me for sure, but I've seen this in other people too, a lot of times if you can just get started, you might find that actually that passion will come back. The enjoyment will come back. And maybe the thing that was holding you back before had a lot to do with something that is now behind you, and you're separated from the emotion, especially as Arthur kind of referenced, like time kind of, I don't want to say it heals all wounds, but it certainly can give you perspective and let you kind of move away from some negative feelings that you might have. So if it's been a month, if it's been 2 months, sometimes if it's been a week, whatever. One of the biggest things I think you can do, though, is just give yourself the opportunity to love it again, to have fun again. And you can't get to that without, getting on the table or getting your stuff out or whatever, right? I think that came, a little bit with you, Bill, and actually with you, Arthur, as well, although going more to AOS in your case, but going into a not entirely new game, but a sort of new game gives you the opportunity to find some fun that, you weren't finding in what you were playing before.
I just like the magic phase, dude.
Yeah.
Bring back the psychic phase. Let me mortal wound people to death.
I actually heard that they were moving the magic phase to the.
We don't know that
for
yet.
4th edition.
We don't know that yet. We can't.
I heard.
Yeah, the modular rule set makes it appear like that could be the case. We'll kind of do what they did with 40K, where they'll put it in different phases. But they're keeping spell lores, which 40K doesn't really have. So
is the key to an actually universally fun magic phase, and for that matter, psychic phase, is the key just for there to be magic dice?
I like magic dice. Yeah, I don't know.
Is that actually, like, when we talk about fun, is that really what the game is having magic dice?
Well, I like the old Warhammer Fantasy magic phase the best, where you had like a pool of dice. But when they ported that to 40K in, like, I don't know, 5th edition or whatever, it fucking sucked. Yeah. And then they kind of just kept using versions of that throughout 40K. And, like, sometimes it was based on your leadership, and then they brought in casting roles, and, like, it was never really done well. Although I had a lot of fun, there's the topic, in 7th edition with this mix of Eldar and Grey Knights, where you got dice equal to, like, the power level of your casters. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty average to have like 5 or 6 dice for most armies, but I was rocking around with like 37. With like allies that shouldn't exist and just doing stuff that like shouldn't happen. But yeah, I found that fun.
That does sound like 7th edition, yeah. Some people found that very fun. I hear, for what it's worth, I'm pretty sure they have magic dice in Old World. So,
you know what? I was actually given Trident exclusive Andy a hard time about Old World because of just like in my humble opinion, Age of Sigmar scratches every niche that I loved out of Warhammer Fantasy. It does all the things I wanted Warhammer Fantasy to do, from like a setting to the combat. But the thing I didn't like about Warhammer Fantasy was sometimes the inflexibility of your movement because of the rank and flank nature. I don't think I need to go play in the Old World because I really like what Age of Sigmar does, and I think it's going to kind of do it better. Though I understand some people want, like, I have 3 ranks of dudes in a triangle, and they're moving over here, and they're in your side
arc. Yeah. I think you're right that is very much just a taste sort of thing. Some people are looking for that sort of thing, especially a lot of the guys coming from the historical board games. Whereas other people like the skirmish style that we have in 40K and in Age of Sigmar. So, it's just whatever floats your boat, right?
Milk.
Yeah.
What floats your boat, Pink Poppy? And why is it juice boxes?
It's
yeah. Oh yeah, on road trips, those are great. Great.
Before we bounce out tonight, there is one more little section we want to quickly cover off with you guys here. You'll be seeing this pop up this week.
We are hosting the world's greatest Age of Sigmar tournament, and alongside of it, there's also a 40K tournament that you guys can sign up to.
Just a small one. So this fall, you guys will have been able to see on various posters and advertisements already earlier this week by the time this drops. We will be hosting a gigantic event. Our very first Edmonton Wargaming Open. We'll be hosting this here in North Edmonton, October 19th and 20th. As Arthur has noted, it will have an Age of Sigmar component. I believe we've made room for 5 or 6 players for that event, I think.
32.
Yes.
Who's counting?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. The Age of Sigmar event will be a full-size GT across both days. It'll be 32 players or more. We'll see how it goes. We're still sorting out exactly our maximum caps. For 40K, we will also be hosting a tournament the same 2 days on the 19th and 20th. This will be a 64-person GT, one of the larger ones you've been able to find in Edmonton for a good long while. And again, we actually may end up having a little more space. We'll see how things go. I know we're looking at incorporating Blood Bowl, I believe, as well, looking for a nice full-size Blood Bowl event as well for the weekend. And we actually might be having a few other events pop on. We'll see. But of course, we'll keep you guys up to date on things. Like I said, this will be October 19th and 20th. There will be both in-house lunches and a full bar available for the entirety of the event. And certainly we're looking to make it one of, if not the coolest event that the city's ever had. So like I said, the details will be all over our social medias by the time you guys see this episode. So go check that out. Feel free to hit us up at tridentwargamingpodcast@gmail.com or on any of the social pages if you got questions or you want to find out more.
I have a question
to share with you guys.
Is there like a discount for signing up early?
For you, no. But for everybody else, yes. There will be early bird pricing until the end of April. That means that May 1st, midnight, that's it for early bird pricing. It's gone. Unless you're one of the folks who's going to come out and check us out at Gamescom in June, when the Gamescom event is running, their narrative event. We will be there in-house with them, and you guys can come by that day, those 2 days, and pick up events or pick up tickets for Edmonton Wargaming Open at the early bird discount, even though the Gamescom is in June.
Just gotta come find us at our booth.
Yeah,
indeed. Arthur will be there the entire time. But yeah, otherwise, your early bird pricing is limited to this first month. It'll be over by the end of April. Depending on which system you're signing up for, the price changes a little bit here and there. But we can guarantee you that this will be a tremendous value for your price that you pick up your ticket for. I think we're looking right now at having, I believe the number is over $2,000 in pricing for this event, and that's, like I said, that's still early. Who knows exactly how high we're going to get?
Yeah.
So we're looking very, very forward to having you guys out this fall with us, and of course, more details will drop as we get closer to the date, including some players packs. But in the meantime, if you'd like to get on the train, now's the time. Go online and grab the tickets as quick as you can.
You know what?
Absolutely.
You know where else would be like a great spot where maybe you could get like an early access deal? Our Patreon. We got some Patreon subscribers.
Sure.
So, you know what? I think Bill here is going to give a shout out to like all these people who have been awesome enough to support us. But if we have earned your support with this podcast or any other content, consider subscribing to our Patreon. We have more content coming down there soon. Or click the link in our link tree. We have some excellent deals. If you love the Monument Hobby Paints, we can get you a little discount on that. We get a tiny kickback as well that helps us out. We have some awesome new terrain by Trident. We got some new shirts and some other merch coming down the lines, including stuff that'll help make your games more winnable, like templates and movement sticks.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
And our partnership with Battlebling as well.
Yep. Yeah, bring out your Battlebling, all the goodies for sure. Definitely check out the link tree. Big shout to our patrons. Without you guys supporting us, we wouldn't be able to go for beers, have coffee, and mull about and talk about what we're going to be doing on the podcast for you guys. We do really appreciate all the support. Thanks, Frederick, Dustin, Chris, and Tyler. Very much appreciated. You can jump on our Patreon for less than $5 a month and basically just kind of support, see what's going on. There is constant updates of new merch that we have coming, different Trident social things we have coming. If you were fortunate to come with us last year, December, it was a nice little Christmas party with a meal. We did some trivia, games, drinky poos. It was a good time, actually. I had a blast.
It actually, it is more integral to our operations than you might think.
Yep.
It actually costs us more than $10,000 just to have Arthur on tonight. So you guys can imagine that, every little bit helps. So,
and if you come out to our Christmas party, you can find out why they call him Purple People Eater Poppy.
Again, please do not Google these things for your own sake. So anyhow, thanks for coming out tonight, guys. Bill and Arthur, very much appreciate having you guys on and getting your guys' different takes on fun.
Winning is fun.
Painting is fun.
So next time you guys encounter Arthur in the wild, you know how to make his day. Just lose.
Just let him win.
Just let him win.
You ever watch Star Wars where Chewbacca, they just let him win?
You're not that hairy of a guy, though, so.
I could do a mean Chewbacca roar.
Oh, well.
Find it on Patreon.
I was going to say, that is an event exclusive. So anyhow, thank you for coming out tonight, guys. And thank you guys for coming to listen or watch us on YouTube. And hopefully we'll be seeing you guys real soon out at the club, out at our events. We have the Battle in the Mortal Realms popping up, 3 weeks from now?
Mayhem in the Mortal Realms.
Mayhem in the Mortal Realms.
And a Heresy Doubles event. We still got a couple tickets left for the Sigmar event. Originally, we were planning to have more, but it sounds like we're kind of doing it within a week of the Party at the All Points podcast. Shout out Party at the All Points. They got a great podcast. If you're in Age of Sigmar, you should check them out. They're pretty good. Hang out with Dalton and friends.
So we hope to see you guys out at our events soon here. See you out at Gamescom, and of course, see you out at the Edmonton War Games Open here in October. So, and if you're just looking for me, you'll probably catch me in another couple weeks on another podcast. So we'll talk to you guys soon, and hopefully you guys have some very fun games between now and then.
Let the Wookiee
Everyone,
win.
Have a good night.
Catch you later.
Did you plug the Patreon? We need to plug the Patreon.